I'm sitting at a corner table at the Azure Wharf watching my sister-in-law, Chloe, laugh like she just won the lottery. She's not just laughing, she's performing. She's leaning back in her velvet chair, gesturing wildly with a glass of vintage champagne that costs more than my first car's monthly insurance premium. Around her are three of her influencer friends, all nodding and snapping photos of the gold-leafed appetizers. Chloe looks at the waiter, a young guy who looks like he's having a panic attack, and flashes a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "And for the main course," she says, her voice carrying across the entire dining room, "we'll take 4 of the jumbo Atlantic lobsters, butter poached, and keep the bottles coming." My sister-in-law is picking up the tab. She's loaded. I don't flinch, I don't argue, I don't even look up from my glass of lemon water. I just feel the cold weight of the recording device in my pocket and the digital trail I've been meticulously laying down for the last 48 hours. See, Chloe thinks I'm the family ATM. She thinks because I spent 15 years building a boutique forensic accounting firm from the dirt up, my money is somehow our money. To her, I'm an asset. To me, she's a liability, and today I'm finally balancing the books. Let's back up for a second. My name is Harper. I'm the kind of person who reads the fine print on a gum wrapper. I track every cent not because I'm cheap, but because I know exactly how hard I worked for every single one of them. My brother Mark married Chloe 3 years ago, and since then my life has been a series of accidental Venmo requests and forgotten wallets. But last night, Chloe crossed a line that most people wouldn't even see. I was hosting a small family gathering at my place. I left my work bag in the foyer, a mistake I'll regret or perhaps thank for the rest of my life. This morning, I got a notification on my phone, an alert from my corporate expense account. A $1,200 charge at a high-end boutique I've never stepped foot in. I checked my bag, my corporate card was missing. Most people would have called the police immediately. Most people would have screamed. But as a forensic accountant, I know that emotions don't win cases, documentation does. I logged into my home security app. There it was. Crystal clear 4,000 footage of Chloe slipping my card out of my bag while she pretended to look for a tissue. She didn't just steal a card, she stole a corporate card tied to a federal auditing firm. That's not just petty theft, that's a one-way ticket to a very dark legal hole. Instead of canceling the card, I waited. I watched the GPS pings. When she checked into the Azure Wharf, the most expensive seafood spot in the city, and invited her inner circle for a victory lap on my dime, I knew this was the moment. I arrived 20 minutes after they sat down. I didn't make a scene. I walked in, sat at a separate table behind a decorative pillar, and watched the entitlement train go off the rails. "Oh my God, Harper," Chloe squealed when she finally noticed me. She didn't even look guilty, she looked predatory. "I was just telling the girls how generous you are. I borrowed your card for the group dinner. You don't mind, right? Family supports family." The table went silent. Her friends looked at me, waiting for the rich sister-in-law to nod and smile. I leaned forward, my face a mask of calm. "Family does support family, Chloe. And I've supported you for 3 years, but there's something you should know about that card." Chloe's smile wavered for a fraction of a second, her hand tightening around her champagne glass. "What do you mean? That's a restricted corporate account," I said, my voice barely a whisper but sharp enough to cut. "Every transaction over $500 triggers an automatic fraud report to our compliance officer. And since I didn't authorize this, well, the report has already been filed." The color drained from her face. She looked at the $500 lobster that the waiter was currently lowering onto the table. "You're joking," she hissed. "Just call them, tell them it was a mistake." I stood up, adjusting my blazer. "I can't do that, Chloe. Once the audit starts, it's out of my hands, but hey, enjoy the lobster. I've already paid for my water." I turned to walk away, but I stopped and looked back at her. The trap wasn't just set, it was about to snap shut in a way she never saw coming. "Oh, and Chloe, you might want to check your phone. I think your bank just sent you a very interesting text message regarding your joint account with my brother." Chloe's hand started to shake, the expensive champagne sloshing against the rim of her glass. She fumbled for her phone, her perfectly manicured nails tapping frantically against the screen. I watched from the edge of the table, my expression as neutral as a stone wall. I knew exactly what she was seeing. A notification from the bank. Not a routine balance update, but a security freeze alert on her and Mark's joint savings. "Harper, what did you do?" she whispered, her voice cracking. Her influencer friends, who were busy taking candid selfies seconds ago, suddenly looked very uncomfortable. They realized the unlimited budget dinner was turning into a crime scene. "I didn't do anything, Chloe," I said, tilting my head slightly. "I simply protected my assets. See, when I saw you take my corporate card on my security camera this morning, I realized something. If you're bold enough to steal from a forensic accountant, you've probably been stealing from my brother for a long time. Mark is a good man, but he's blinded by what he thinks is love. He's a high school teacher, hardworking, humble, and far too trusting. He'd been complaining for months about how inflation was eating up their house down payment fund. But as I looked at Chloe's new designer bags and her $400 hair extensions, the math didn't add up. While Chloe was busy ordering the second bottle of Crystal, I had spent my afternoon doing what I do best. A deep dive audit. I'd called Mark an hour ago. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I just sent him a spreadsheet. A line-by-line breakdown of the hidden withdrawals Chloe had been making from their joint account, money meant for their future home, funneled into her lifestyle expenses and high-interest credit card debts she'd kept secret. "You called Mark?" Chloe's face went from pale to a ghostly white. "You had no right to interfere in our marriage." "Interfere?" I let out a dry, short laugh. "I'm an auditor, Chloe. I just corrected a decimal point. Mark has already moved the remaining funds to a private account I helped him set up 3 years ago, just in case. He's currently at your apartment packing a suitcase. Not his. Yours." One of her friends, a girl named Tiffany who spent the last 10 minutes bragging about her brand deals, cleared her throat loudly. Chloe, does this mean the bill isn't covered because I didn't bring my purse?" The timing was poetic. The waiter returned, hovering awkwardly with a secondary bottle of wine. "Excuse me, ma'am, the corporate card you provided. It's been flagged as stolen or lost. The system won't let us process any further charges." The silence at the table was deafening. The $500 lobsters sat there, steaming and expensive, suddenly looking like lead weights. "There must be a mistake," Chloe barked at the waiter, trying to regain her queen bee persona. "Run it again, or use this one." She pulled out her personal debit card, the one linked to the account Mark had just drained. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the waiter said after a few seconds, his voice loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. "This one is declined as well. Insufficient funds." I saw the looks from the other diners, the subtle whispers, the raised eyebrows. In a place like the Azure Wharf, being declined is a social death sentence. Chloe was crumbling. This was a woman who lived for the aesthetic of wealth, and now she was being exposed as a fraud in front of her hand-picked audience. "Harper, please," she hissed, looking at me with genuine desperation for the first time in her life. "Don't do this, not here, just pay the bill and I'll pay you back, I promise." "With what money, Chloe?" I asked. "The money you stole from my company, or the money you embezzled from your husband's retirement? You're a liability, and a liability is something you write off, you don't invest more into it." I turned to the waiter. "I've already paid for my sparkling water and the appetizer I had at the bar. Separate check, as for the rest." I looked at the $1,800 running total on their table. "That's between you and these 4 ladies?" I started to walk away, but I felt a hand grab my arm. It was Chloe, her eyes wild. "You can't leave me here like this. They'll call the cops?" I gently unhooked her hand from my blazer. "Actually, Chloe, the police are likely already on their way to your apartment to discuss the theft of a federal contractor's credit card. If I were you, I'd worry less about the lobster and more about finding a very good and very cheap lawyer." As I stepped toward the exit, I heard the manager approaching their table with 2 large security guards. The smart trap was working perfectly. But the real public catharsis was yet to come. The heavy glass doors of the Azure Wharf swung shut behind me, but I didn't leave. I walked across the street to a small, dimly lit park bench that had a perfect view of the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows. I pulled out my tablet and logged into the restaurant's public live story tag on Instagram. Chloe's influencer friends were doing exactly what I expected. Instead of helping her, they were recording. Tiffany, the girl who supposedly had thousands of followers, was literally live streaming the confrontation. "OMG guys, you won't believe the drama at dinner tonight," she whispered into her phone, panning the camera to show Chloe's tear-streaked face. Turns out our host was using a stolen card. Stay tuned for the tea. This was the public catharsis. Chloe had spent years building a digital facade of luxury, a house of cards built on other people's labor. Now her own community was the one tearing it down for clout. Inside, the manager was pointing at the unfinished lobsters. He wasn't yelling, he was professional, which is much scarier. He was handing Chloe a landline phone, likely telling her to call someone who could actually pay. But who was left? I had already texted our parents. My mother, a retired school teacher who prides herself on integrity, was horrified. She had seen the security footage I sent her 10 minutes ago. Her response was a single, devastating sentence. "We are staying with Mark tonight, do not call us." Chloe was truly alone. I watched as two uniformed officers entered the restaurant. They didn't go in with sirens blaring, they walked in with the quiet authority that comes with a grand larceny report. In the state of New York, stealing a corporate card and charging over $1,000 isn't a misdemeanor, it's a felony. Chloe's shoulders slumped. She looked small. The entitled SIL persona had evaporated, leaving behind a terrified woman who realized that family wasn't a bottomless pit she could keep digging into. I scrolled through my phone and saw a message from Mark. "Harper, I found the shoebox. It wasn't just your card. She's been opening lines of credit in my name for 2 years. The mail," she was intercepting the statements, "I'm done. The locks are changed." My heart ached for my brother, but I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. A forensic accountant doesn't just find the leak, we plug it. Back in the restaurant, the scene was reaching its climax. One of the officers was holding a pair of handcuffs. Chloe was gesturing wildly toward the exit, probably claiming I was the one who gave her the card. But I had prepared for that too. Before I even sat down at the restaurant, I had sent an encrypted email to my firm's chief security officer. It contained the video of the theft, a copy of the unauthorized charges, and a formal statement. By the time Chloe mentioned my name to the police, they already had a digital file proving her intent. I saw Tiffany and the other friends being ushered out by security. They were laughing, actually laughing, as they walked toward the valet. They didn't care about Chloe, they cared about the content. That was the ultimate irony. Chloe had traded her real family for a fake one, and the fake one was currently tagging her in a scammer alert post. I stood up from the bench, the cold night air hitting my face. The first part of the smart trap was the financial freeze. The second was the social exile, but the third, the legal fanda, was about to tighten. I hailed a cab. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked. "The 19th precinct," I said quietly. "I have some original documents to hand over for an ongoing fraud investigation." As the cab pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of Chloe through the window. She was being led out of the restaurant, not in a limo, but in the back of a squad car. The $500 lobster was still sitting on the table, cold and untouched. Accountability isn't always loud, but it is always inevitable. 2 months later, I'm sitting in a sterile, white-walled room at the county courthouse. I'm not here as a victim, I'm here as a witness for the state. My laptop is open, a final spreadsheet glowing on the screen. In my world, numbers don't have feelings and they never tell lies. They are the ultimate truth tellers. Chloe sat across the aisle at the defense table. The influencer glow was gone. Her hair, once styled with expensive extensions, was pulled back in a messy, flat ponytail. She was wearing a cheap, off-the-rack blazer that looked 3 sizes too big. She wouldn't even look at me. Beside her sat a court-appointed lawyer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. When the assistant district attorney called my name, I walked to the stand with the same calm I use when I'm presenting a quarterly audit. "Miss Harper," the prosecutor began, "can you explain the nature of the family tab the defendant claims she had access to?" I adjusted the microphone. There was no tab. There was a series of documented thefts. Over the course of 18 months, the defendant utilized unauthorized access to 3 separate lines of credit, a joint savings account under false pretenses, and finally, a restricted federal corporate card. I glanced at the monitor where my evidence was being projected for the judge. It wasn't just the $1,800 dinner. It was the $14,000 in ghost withdrawals she had made from my brother's mortgage fund. It was the $6,000 in credit card debt she had forged his signature to hide. "She's my sister-in-law," Chloe suddenly blurted out, her voice cracking with that same old entitlement. "It was a family matter. She's trying to ruin my life over a dinner." The judge, a silver-haired woman with eyes like flint, didn't even look up from her notes. "Counselor," the judge said to Chloe's lawyer, "remind your client that this is a court of law, not a reality show. Silence, please." The smart trap had reached its final stage. Because the corporate card was tied to a firm that handles federal audits, the theft triggered a mandatory investigation by the financial regulatory authorities. It wasn't just a family spat anymore. It was a felony-level financial crime. As I stepped down from the stand, I walked past Chloe. She leaned in, whispering through gritted teeth, "I hope you're happy. Mark won't even take my calls." "I have nothing." "You have exactly what you earned, Chloe," I replied, my voice low and steady. "You spent 3 years treating people like stepping stones. You just didn't realize you were stepping on a landmine." The sentencing was swift. Due to the lack of a prior record, she avoided heavy jail time, but the legal fanda was far more effective. She was sentenced to 5 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and a mandatory restitution order. Every cent she earns for the next decade will be garnished until my brother and my firm are paid back in full. But the real public catharsis happened outside the courtroom. A local news crew was waiting on the steps. Chloe, ever the narcissist, thought she could spin the story. She walked toward the cameras, putting on her victim face. "I just want to say that family should come before money," she began, but she was interrupted. A group of women, the very friends she had tried to impress at the Azure Wharf, were standing nearby. Tiffany, the one who live-streamed the dinner, stepped forward holding a printed copy of the Scammer Alert article that had gone viral. "Hey Chloe," Tiffany shouted, filming with her phone. "Are you going to tell them about the fake designer bags you sold us on your closet sale, or the $2,000 you owe me for the Vegas trip?" The cameras caught it all. The facade was completely stripped away. Chloe wasn't a high-flying influencer, she was a cautionary tale. She scurried away, shielding her face with a cheap handbag as the very audience she lived for turned their cameras on her like a pack of wolves. Later that evening, I met Mark at a small, quiet diner. No lobster, no champagne, just 2 burgers and a sense of peace. He looked tired, but for the first time in years, he looked free. "I got the final divorce decree today," he said, sliding a paper across the table. "And the bank confirmed the restitution schedule. It's over, Harper. Thank you for waking me up." I squeezed his hand. "I didn't wake you up, Mark. I just balanced the books." In the anatomy of revenge, the best part isn't the blow you land, it's the silence that follows when the liability is finally removed from your life.